Welcome, everybody, to the most ill-conceived business podcast around, the Business is Bullshit podcast. I'm James Hornick. Joining me are my best buddies in the world, Jared Gibson, John Sarakis. Yeah, I love the heart. It's great. Episode 6, guys. We're halfway to Jared's goal
today. No noise from John today.
It was a hand noise.
If viewers on the YouTube edition can see the noise John was making. Before we get it, today we're going to talk about predictions. That's the episode. We're going to talk about end-of-year predictions, since I don't know when this is going to air, and we have some strong feelings about the idiocy of end-of-year predictions. Before we get into that, we were just rambling offline about crappy meetings, which I think could be its own podcast topic someday. Maybe we end up rambling on this for 20 minutes and is a podcast, but I had a discussion with a good contact who it's like Friday morning, and she's before she gets home, she's like, sorry for being late. Like you wouldn't believe, like meeting ran over, people started bitching about this and that. And I really believe, and maybe this is my first prediction of things that won't ever change, is that most of business would be fixed if people could do two things right: talk to each other like adults and to solve their own problems, and run an efficient meeting that doesn't go over, doesn't ramble, and you just actually get shit done. Because I think overwhelming majority meetings are garbage.
So talking to people like they're adults, does that mean like direct? Like,
yeah,
like Brad, your breath smells. You need to leave.
I mean,
like that's direct, right? Yeah.
What's that radical candor? Is that what they call it these days? I mean, is that what they're talking about?
There's a book on it, which is essentially that.
Give me an example of like stuff that we've all seen that are the people not talking like adults. I mean, are we talking about sports, or talking about like the weather, or talking about family?
The context is this is a woman who's like a HR leader, like a CHRO type, and she's just got like a bomb thrown at her plate, like of one employee like bitching about another employee, and she had to fix it. And she's just like, what? Like, just because I'm HR, I'm not the keeper of solver of all your problems. Like, can't you just talk to each other like adults?
Have a grown up conversation with, and that's the stuff you see. I mean, even as a parent, like, hey, we heard from the principal, and another parent called and said something about it. And it's like, why couldn't that parent just pick up the phone and have a conversation with us?
Yeah.
Like, why do we have to like have a mediator like do this as an adult? Like, we're not children anymore. So yeah, I agree with that. And that, but
you guys want to hear about an HR fail?
Yeah.
So I used to work at this other company, and HR was like a former, NFL cheerleader, right? Nice lady, no HR experience, but they're like, yeah, let's give her a job. So
they put her in HR because you don't need to know anything.
Yeah. And the whole office was like rudely conspiring against this one girl. So she's like, okay, like, I don't know if she was in on it, but she's like, let's just go ahead and make a comment box, right? This comment box was literally just full of complaints about this one girl to like get her removed. Yeah, just total nightmare of an abuse of power. Anyway, that ended up being one of the best employees, and I hired her. She's been an employee of mine for like 15 years now. No.
You got to be a real chicken shit to fill something out, put it on a piece of paper, talking shit about somebody else, and put it into a box and then walk away from the box.
But also in just thinking that that's going to be like a vehicle to get somebody removed. Like that's what I don't like about HR, when people really try to abuse it. And to me, I was really early in my career, and I saw that, and I was just like, God, jeez. I mean,
and do they think the HR people themselves want to deal with this shit? Like how are you not embarrassed that? Like, do you think it's easily the worst part of their job, or anybody's job, is trying to fix someone else's problems? But yeah, I think that broadly speaking, because then there's a flip side of it. There's the people who let their issues with someone else fester because they can't just have. So I would argue that's even worse than tattletaling to HR. You know what I mean? Just letting your frustrations pile up instead of like solving your shit. So I don't know.
I think that's the biggest issue right there, is people avoid having those conversations, and they tuck them away until it all comes out in a massive explosion, rather than trying to diffuse that bomb before it goes off, which, let's be honest, most people season are not going to have that conversation.
Yeah. And I think, and I guess another thing too, though, that I've realized with the HR is there should be some kind of vetting or qualification process to make sure that these people like aren't gossips. Because I've seen some others in some other companies like, whoa, like you should not be sharing any of this information that you're sharing with me right now. Granted, I get it that they're humans, but that personality trait should not be in anyone that works in HR.
You want to hear something, John?
Yeah, absolutely.
Superlatives. Remember superlatives? We can't have superlatives anymore because everything that's going on with cancel culture.
I miss that meeting. Really?
And yearbook, remember yearbook, like your graduating class, didn't you have like best looking or most athletic?
Yeah.
All that
Most
superlatives.
likely to.
Most likely
biggest
to.
loser. Yeah.
Biggest loser. Yeah.
Least likely to succeed.
I
Look at this druggie.
I got biggest hall wanderer and biggest gossip in Revere High School class of 1999.
Biggest gossip.
Biggest gossip.
It actually doesn't surprise me that much. I'm not gonna lie. I can see that. Anyway.
Yeah.
Get comfortable having difficult conversations, people. It's a life skill. Anyways.
There's and Google this. One thing just to put a pen in this or put a whatever on.
Yeah,
this.
yeah, got it. Yeah.
There's a There's a tactic that we used in my previous company called 5-stepping somebody.
Okay. Yeah.
Everybody, I'm not going to go through it now, but like Google a 5-step process to hard conversations. We use that religiously with our team, and it made those hard conversations so much better and easier to have. So 5-step process, Google.
All right. Check that out. Okay. Do a post on it. Okay. Let's move on. We want to talk about predictions. It's early December here. We're recording this. It might not come out for another week or two, but by the time this comes out, like everyone, every publication, every company, I mean, a lot of them already are making their predictions for 2025. And I don't understand. I'm going to do this on my other podcast more to make fun of it also. But like, why is everyone obsessed with making predictions at the end of the year? Like, why is this a thing? We did a little research. We put our heads together. We talked about it, and there's definitely some cognitive processes and reasons why people do this, which various motivations. But so we want to talk about why everyone is so prediction obsessed, why it's stupid, what are some stupid predictions we've seen historically and more recently, and then we're going to make, because we're hypocrites, our own dumbass predictions for 2025. That's the show.
And I got to say, I actually love making predictions.
They're great.
I do. It's a gamble. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're right, like the payoff is huge. You're like, oh yeah, look how smart I am.
There's
and
no
if you're wrong, you're like,
if you're wrong.
So
Exactly. The lack of accountability. Yeah.
Like I could say to myself, like I thought about this and I told somebody this and that was wrong. I fucked up. Moving on.
Right.
But if I get it right, I'm going to let everybody know that I got it right.
Oh, dude, it's huge. And you feel so good. You're like, oh, man, God. Man.
Jared, kick us off here. Reasons why people make predictions. What do you got?
I mean, for me, the way that I look at it is like, we don't like not knowing what's going to happen in the future. So we make these predictions to kind of put our mind at ease about things that are ahead of us, as opposed to things that like we're either currently in or behind us. So we predict things. And based off of those predictions, we put a lot of behaviors, a lot of processes, a lot of things in motion toward those predictions. For me, that's as simple as can possibly be. And there's other reasons too that you guys will get into, but I think that is most likely one of the main, at least psychological reasons why people like to predict things.
So it's like a control thing. You think you can control more if you make predictions.
100%.
Okay. John, what do you got?
I got overconfidence bias, right? So I think, maybe even speaking for myself, it's just a using like your past experience and your knowledge to just go ahead and say like, hey, this is right. This is what's around the corner. This is what's going to happen. You just make like a really bold forecast. In the future, milk's going to make a huge comeback, right? Or whatever those are, like the shake weight guys. Yeah, it's right around the corner. Because
what's the shake weight? Could you give me, what do you mean by that? What's the shake weight?
Well, just take your hand and pretend something phallic's in it and get it real close to your mouth, Jared.
God, here we go. Moving on. I always thought it's mostly people, and you see this mostly on like social media business influencers, people talking their book. So they're motivated, like they're saying something because they want people to believe it because it can help them sell something or help their point of view, like helped out. So it's a very motivated reasoning type thing. But then on top of that, it's just social clout. It's people like, check out these predictions I made, and the more it gets shared, the more people like it, the more people agree with it. They're like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about because he believes the same thing I do. I'm going to follow him, that kind of stuff. So I think we all
kind of do that. That last one, we all do. Everybody does that.
Yeah. Right? It's I think they're all kind of based on predictions are based on your experience, unless you're just like on drugs or something, right? I mean, you're always taking like your historics and what you know. But I think to the one that Jared's saying is like, it's talking your book, to me, that's kind of the most, I guess you would say, immoral right?
Yeah.
Because you're literally just trying to do it for your best interest. It's actually not for the greater community.
But do you believe it?
Happens.
Do you believe it? If you believe it, then what's wrong with it? What's wrong with
no? Because where it's most common is in the financial markets. CEOs or whoever that want to talk about. And there's actually, not to skip down for dumbass predictions, but there was. I'll go ahead and do that. One of the ones I found out. Jamie Dimon was predicting that Bitcoin's a flood and was going to blow up in 2017. Of course, he said that because he's a banker, and at the moment in time, he saw Bitcoin as a threat. Now, Bitcoin still could blow up, but that prediction was made 8 years ago in a few months here. It's just he's motivated for it to fail, so he's trying to down talk it. Anyways, but there's that happens all the time.
Look at, we know this isn't a sports podcast, but sports podcasts on predictions on betting are huge, and all that is Vegas setting lines, and it's prediction, right? People, I'm going to predict that I know enough about this team and whatever they have that I'm going to predict that they win by this amount of points.
Really? They're
different.
Influencing it in that way?
No, Jared, that's not. It's not the same thing.
No.
This would be if someone was trying to convince people to bet a certain way so they could make a higher profit. You know what I mean? If they were trying to swing the line in their favor,
they're super
That's
motivated.
Okay,
yeah.
They're motivated.
George Soros or whatever, just total manipulation.
A lot of investor bros on Twitter. Or think of the crypto pumpers, the people who are trying to get people, this new altcoin's the biggest thing because they own a ton of it and they want people to start buying it so they can dump it on them. You know what I mean?
Or the former CEO of I think it was Whole Foods would get into chat rooms based on the other ones for other grocery stores, and he would say, "Oh yeah, they suck," to watch their stock go down, so he could supposedly come in and buy it for a lesser value.
But if you're the CEO of Netflix, you're going to predict that streaming is going to get bigger. If you're the CEO of whatever company, you're going to predict that whatever benefits your company is going to happen because you have to project that confidence, even though
that's their job. That's their job, though.
Imagine if they didn't.
Yeah, but it's very
talk, bro.
But it's very. But the thing is, you have to admit at the same time, too, for all these reasons, whether it's overconfidence, illusion, no one knows anything. Literally, no one knows what's going to happen next year at any prediction. So that's why the whole thing's so silly. No one can predict the future, which is the entire point of why the whole thing's silly.
I think
these are just the reasons why.
My sports gambling analogy still works. It just didn't work when I plugged it in at that time because it's still predicting outcomes of games.
It's predicting probabilities of probabilities of outcomes. It's not really predicting outcomes. It's two different things.
God damn, you're too smart for me, James. Moving on.
All right. Let's just fuck it. Let's move on. We have a list of bad predictions to give you a better idea of what we're talking about. And John, you had a bunch of them. Bad predictions from the past. These are all real, by the way.
So some of these, I think some people are going to know. I think one of the most famous ones is the horse is here to stay, but the automobile is only a novelty. That was essentially the people that were the banker that was talking to Henry Ford, when they're going to give him a loan, but turning him down for a loan. My favorite is the subscription model of buying music is bankrupt, and that was Steve Jobs, and that's a huge part of what Apple does today.
What year was that?
That was in 2003.
Yeah, good one.
Stepping on his.
What year did he die?
2011. October. I think it was in October 2011, if I'm not mistaken. It was right after the book came out.
What'd you have for breakfast that day?
Well, I think it's interesting because I read that book and I realized it turned me into a little bit of an asshole because I was like, oh, yeah, that's what Steve Jobs was. And then a couple weeks later, I was like, God, I think that book could ruin my life. And then I realized other people that were reading that book, everybody I would recommend it to, they would turn into an asshole for a little bit. And I think it was just one of those you are what you eat kind of things. You consume that type of stuff. You got to be very careful of what it does to you.
You guys just all showing up, having conversations in black turtlenecks like a bunch of douches.
Dude, I quit a company that the guy thought he was Steve Jobs at the time. He would come in there with black turtleneck and jeans and he would sit back and do this, in meetings.
Love that. Yeah. Very zen.
Yeah. One more. Go ahead.
Go for it.
No one will ever need more than 637 kilobytes of memory for a personal computer. That was Bill Gates. So I love the Steve Jobs and Bill Gates one because they actually stepped on their own words in their future.
Ruined their own shit, yeah.
And they kept moving. Like I said, everybody loves to make predictions.
I got two from the financial industry. The one I already said is when Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan Chase in 2017 said Bitcoin's a fraud and will blow up. Now he's actually pro-Bitcoin. But the other one was Zuck back in 2001 saying the metaverse will generate hundreds of billions by 2022. that's talking your fucking book. Like best example of it I can find here. Anyway,
big time. I mean, so mine was, I mean, you could literally Google all of Elon Musk's predictions over the last 20 years, and he's got a lot of them. And most of them didn't come to fruition. But the ones, like going back to John, what you said, like he's known for what he predicted and what he's doing now, like the ones that he got right, which is a very, very small percentage. I mean, he said that we would have colonized Mars by now.
Yeah, he's only like a couple of weeks off.
Yeah, he's got time. Could happen.
Just a few. But it's just funny that people don't pay attention to the predictions that go wrong. And some of them are important predictions too. Like I didn't.
Well, that's the thing. Some like that Jim Cramer guy. But... Speaking of financial markets, like all of his predictions are like historically wrong. Like if you want a stock to go down, it's what he recommends.
That's the biggest joke on Twitter. Is anytime he recommends something, you got to short that shit.
But he still has a job. He's not a weatherman, right? It's not like, actually, if a weatherman was as wrong as that guy is, I don't think that person would still have a job because, crops would be dead and people would be overly sunburned. Like that guy has lost people millions and millions of dollars.
Did you watch so going back to what we were talking about, how we spit what is it? Talk the book. The episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm where the weatherman, he couldn't get a tea time. So he predicted, he talked about the weather being shitty on Saturday. Cancel your weekend plans. Bad weather. And Larry went out to the golf course because it was nice out. And he saw the weatherman playing golf just by himself on the course and gave him shit for it. Shows
talking your book. I love it.
Yeah.
Let's move on to we had some other things. We've seen some things recently. Some of these might have been attributable to specific people, but Jared's not comfortable with calling people out on LinkedIn yet. But we've seen all these repeatedly. Like there's some very common ones that keep getting thrown around in the business universe. I can go first if you want me to here to kind of like try to make a hard pivot segue. Everyone's talking about fucking AI agents all the time. It's AI agents are going to take over. You're going to be running whole departments. They're going to be doing all these things. Like it's going to be the new 2025 trend. I just think AI agents it's going to happen someday, but I think everyone is overconfident first off in how quickly that's going to happen. So thing number one. Two, it's AI companies talking their book because they want people to buy into whatever they're selling. And I think it's also just one of the things I want to talk about that I think won't change. I don't think that people quite realize how long some of these things actually take to put into practice. Like we're still in a stage where the overwhelming majority of people, like they may have played around with ChatGPT, but it's not like organizations are like widespread using it. The average person gets it. So the idea that we're going to jump 3 phases in a year where people are going to master a certain thing, find a use for it, and then feel comfortable enough to turn it completely over to software technology, which probably doesn't even work and won't even be ready in time, is just like ludicrous to me. So I believe the AI agents will be a thing, but I think in terms of them actually being useful next year, it's like the dumbest down version of it. And it's just not going to be, we're a couple of years off.
How far off from an AI agent giving me a foot rub? Is that anywhere in my lifetime? Is that not going to happen?
I mean, I think that knowing you, John, you would skip the foot rub and go elsewhere.
Yeah, let's just moving on. Who else has something they want to shit on?
So I'll go. Saw one that about marketers will rebalance budgets toward brand, and I call bullshit on that. We've been hearing that for years, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's like marketers' dream is if that actually came to fruition. But at the end of the day, until you can put something into place that is repeatable, that shows ROI on brand, I just don't know how that ultimately gets through finance in a lot of these businesses that don't get it. I think that you may start to see more businesses understanding the importance of brand, but I'm just not sure that they're ready to rebalance budgets and dump money into brand.
It's so hard.
Today.
And there's so much bullshit around that because, so first off, attribution is a nightmare, right? Mm-hmm. Because everybody's on one hand trying to protect data, and then on the other side, you have everybody trying to attribute data to like what caused a decision. And then when you have brand, that's a mental construct, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the way that somebody feels about something, or how they trust, or they decide, or that promise. And people inherently don't know sometimes why they made the selections they made. So you're not going to be able to get those. So the whole data and tracking and AI being able to solve that it's still going to be the same mess. And then based on that podcast you listened to and you got a doctorate, Jared, based on the what was it, AI confusing itself or whatnot.
It's called model collapse, John.
He's been getting research so much. He's been getting so much usage out of that one podcast he listened to.
And by the way, it was three podcasts and a long ass article that I read. So technically, I know my shit when it comes to
model very professorial now. You should be teaching class on it. In any event, I think in that kind of landscape, in that world, that's where it's really going to collapse.
Yeah, I think that I agree with this one a ton because I believe that brand is hugely important, but I also believe that most executives think they know everything about marketing and they know nothing. And if you can't attach specific RI, they'll never get behind it, even though we all know it would work better. But I think it's just another it's another example of I would assume anyone who's saying this and spouting this is a brand marketer who's once again talking his book, promoting his services by saying this is going to be the next big thing. So,
the safe play is to not dump money into brand.
Yeah. And to be clear, I think you should. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Of course.
Yeah.
Great.
Especially today. I mean, look where we are as a society, dude. The decision makers are becoming the millennials who are all over social. And obviously brands more than just that, but.
All right. Coming up with the tail. I like the real easy predictions, right? Like relationships and original content will win. So like people are saying this, and that's a no shit, right? Because you have the scenarios where you're going to repurpose somebody else's content. It's as if we're mentally incapable of realizing, like, have I seen this before? And so I think anything that's going to be original and have that human touch to it is of course going to continually go forward throughout all of our lifetimes. But also AI's impact, I think, would only be helpful in the fact of somebody helping create something original or supporting the content necessary so somebody then could present something original.
Yeah, the classic way to go out on a limb kind of prediction.
Having
people like you, it makes them more likely to buy from you. Yeah, no shit. Good call.
Toilets will still flush in the future.
All right. You ready for some of our dumbass predictions? Let's do this.
I don't think so.
All right.
John, lead us off here. What dumbass things do you think are going to happen next year?
Services are going to continue to get commoditized, and service jobs will continue to be outsourced overseas because of rising costs. So I think all my predictions are pretty much going to be the continuances. And I believe that AI is going to have a huge blame in that series of events. Also, another one I'm getting more looking at companies to purchase and whatnot, getting more familiar with is private investments are going to continue to create consolidation, over optimizing cost and price, and the customer service and quality are just going to go into the toilet. Because if one of your favorite companies gets purchased by a private equity company, there's a high probability that it's just going to get into the world of suck sooner than later. Which also, I might add, creates enormous opportunities for companies that are willing to do purchasing in the right way. But that's a whole nother podcast. Another prediction: movies and shows are going to get a little bit better because of DEI sensitivity has leveled off. Another one that's near and dear to my heart: ad agencies and marketing.
Hold up a second. Do you think that's why TVs and movies have leveled off? And I'm sorry, why they start sucking? I'm sorry. Let me rephrase. Do you think DEI is why TV sucks now? Is that actually
so? There's two reasons. I think it's the ability to make a movie or show for less, right? Because production costs and whatnot have gone down. So the probability of getting something approved for a lower budget is there. And then, I think people are just trying to really play it safe, and they're trying to appeal something to everybody without something that's very distinct with the characters. And I think that's been a big reason. Yeah, think about comedies. Why did comedies die? Sensitivity.
Yeah.
Okay. On that point, I can agree.
This is a whole separate. I
think it's a separate podcast. I don't, because anytime I hear this, I think of like people getting upset that the Little Mermaid was black this time around, which I'm just like, I didn't see the movie. If the movie sucked, that was why.
You didn't see the movie, exactly.
Yeah.
Right there.
I just wouldn't watch it in principle. I think that if I think writing has gotten bad. I think executives. I think every time there's a tail off in the quality of creative television or movies, it's always because the suits got involved and don't let the creatives actually execute on their vision 100% of the time. They don't let the writers do it. And you could say that's part of it, but I just think the bigger influence is how streaming and everything else, like the cost, everything has gotten less profitable. And so when that happens, the suits take over. They don't let the smart people who actually know how to make something interesting to run that. I think that's the real reason. And it's getting conflated with DEI because you just see that happening at the same time, in my opinion.
But I think it's one of those things. So, for instance, it was already happening because things were getting less expensive to make, right? So you have more fragmentation, where people sometimes think that that's a good thing. So we had more fragmentation. But then you add this other layer of people having a fear, which is the ultimate enemy of creativity. And dude, that's why I believe we're in the position that we're in.
All right. Yeah. Agree to disagree. To be continued. Let's carry on. We'll come back to this next time. Anything else you got?
Just a couple other things. Ad agencies and marketing agencies are going to have a good year embracing AI before clients figure out that they're being overcharged. And then humans will further decline in their ability to share emotions on account of using things like ChatGPT to navigate conversations via text and email. So they're just going to get shittier at being able to connect with others.
I don't hate those.
They're good.
It was pretty good.
We could probably talk about all those, though.
Yeah, maybe we'll deep dive as these happen in 2025. We'll have shows about them. Jared, what do you got? What kind of crappy predictions do you have?
I only got two. The first is a prediction that I saw that I think is pretty obvious, and I think it's been going on for a while, was that the smaller startups are going to start running circles, that are AI startups are going to start running circles around these large corporations, because there's so much politics involved in the larger corporations, and just red tape about having to get stuff done, and not being, it's got to be perfect before we launch it. When you've got these smaller companies that obviously are a lot more agile and just kind of building the shit as it flies, that are going to run circles around. So my prediction is that these larger corporations this isn't a crazy prediction, are going to start acquiring quickly in a lot of these smaller AI startups, right? Not because of necessarily the technology and the software, but because of the culture that comes with it, right? So I wrote down, so they're build their operations, decision-making processes, a more AI native culture that can come in and help spread that type of culture within these corporations. So I think that there's going to be a massive M&A movement in 2025 around buying a lot of these small AI startups because of cultural reasons, as opposed to only the software and the innovation reasons.
I will say this. I agree. We'll probably see it happen. I also think it won't actually work, though. Is like the flip
Agreed.
side.
I was gonna double down on that because I have an example.
Yeah, because just like for anyone who's not like, this is how disruption happens, is always because like big companies get too big and slow to actually create new shit. So they try to buy stuff out, like for the points Jared makes, but you can't really, I don't think you can actually change a culture once a company gets certain
this
size.
is what happened with the .com bubble.
Yeah.
Right. That's what created it. Everybody's like, oh yeah, all you need is some eyeballs on that website and everybody wins. And then next thing you know, everybody's buying that, and then it collapsed. Take beer, right? Years ago, there was all these like little beer, what do you call them? What do they call independent beer labels?
Microbrews.
All these microbrews coming out, right? And then all the major brewers were buying all those little ones, and then they just kept popping up and just continually taking market share. And then what happens? People are like, you know what? I'm kind of sick of fucking beer. And then the market goes flat, right? Yeah. And then like, how many times have you heard about a new microbrew, or sat next to your buddy that knows a bunch about beer and you can still tolerate, sitting down with that bastard? Yeah.
Disgusting IPAs. Gross.
Exactly. Yeah. I agree.
But the whole idea of like a cultural acquisition.
Yeah.
It feels like it's so hard to actually make that work.
Yeah. Because you get, work has the opposite effect.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So that's my first prediction. My second prediction is more up, because I run a LinkedIn agency. This is more around LinkedIn. LinkedIn will get rid of their connection. This is a out of left field crazy prediction, but I think it'd be hilarious.
But if you're right,
I'm coming back. We'll talk about it. LinkedIn will get rid of their connection request feature. The LinkedIn losers will implode all over themselves, AI commenting will be reeled in by LinkedIn. Probably not, but it would be great if it was. And the egos of many will take a massive hit when they realize their content actually sucks and the bot factories that were engaging with them are in fact robots.
What are things that will never happen for 1,000, Alex? I mean, it's your fever dream. That's what you want to happen, but like
I think that's what most people want to happen.
LinkedIn's not going to do shit, man. Like there's no chance, 0% chance.
I want to know who the LinkedIn loser is. Like, what's that profile? What's that persona?
Name some people.
I know. I knew you were. I knew we were getting there.
Just stepping into it.
I think that there's a lot of egos, inflated egos on LinkedIn. I think any social media channel.
Yeah, I was going to say
LinkedIn is
social.
Yeah, any social media channel. But just because like we're talking about business. It's the only, like it or not. I don't like it, but it's the only business channel that's out there from a social media perspective. And there's people that just think their shit does not stink, and I can't. For some reason, I'm like eerily attracted to when they post in their content, but it just like angers me, and I go down rabbit holes, and then I just have to get off.
So is your perfect world where like LinkedIn and Twitter like have a baby, where people like say like, hey, here are the 5 best business books you could read, and somebody jumps in there like, you fucking moron. And they go on their slants, Is that
I don't think that could ever happen, because there's too much, because of business. Like businesses will not let people be on that channel if that ever happens.
Yeah, I think that's what.
You know what I mean?
I think the loser thing, though, I think it's there because there's just an inherent inauthenticity that's apparent, because people they're wearing their work uniform and they're going on there. So it's it's like the birthday party that's at the office where everybody's like, "Oh, happy birthday, Carol," and then they're like, "You know what? I mean, I'd have just mixed feelings if Carol just wasn't here anymore." I don't care. It's like that's the reality of the situation, but that's what we're seeing.
Can't say that in the comments. Yeah.
I do think that there's a lot of really, really good shit on LinkedIn, but you just have to find it. Right.
I think there's a little bit of good shit on LinkedIn.
I think there's some good. I think there's a lot of good shit on LinkedIn. The problem is that you're never going to see it, because the algorithm controls what you see, and there's no transparency whatsoever at LinkedIn. So they're not going to tell you what the algorithm's based on. You just kind of got to guess and listen to the gurus tell you what the algorithm likes and what it doesn't.
Their predictions.
This is so I'm saying this, and I'll this is the easiest prediction to shit on, because LinkedIn has a monopoly. They have no reason to change. They don't make their money from social media. They make their money from LinkedIn Recruiter license and Sales Navigator license. They don't care enough to put the effort in to make any changes. It's working just fine for them.
And ads.
Yeah. I think this LinkedIn Recruiter license is way more than his ads. Anyway.
I brought this up for a reason, because I know it would be a good dumping point that we could all talk about.
All right, let me do my predictions and take us home here. We're going a little bit longer than I'd like, because we've got some feedback. We got to keep it tight. Here's my predictions. A bunch of shit's never going to change. It's all the things are going to continue to suck. First off, I started the podcast with this: bad meetings are still going to exist. Everyone out there, the majority of your problems are caused by the fact that you are stuck in endless Zoom meetings that are run inefficiently. People just ramble on endlessly, and you can't get any actual work done. It's not going to change because people suck. Second one, people will resist change, which is why most of these predictions will never come true. Most of the outrageous ones, like people hate change. They want to keep doing things. They've always done it. You can make the wildest predictions that should happen because it just makes sense. A lot of them won't, because it's just inertia is going to prevent that from happening. Another predictions, the Peter principle, people will continue to be promoted to their level of incompetence. Everyone's seen this a million times. Someone who is pretty good at their job gets promoted to a next level where they kind of suck, and that's where they just cap out. And then they become your manager, or maybe they become the VP, maybe they become the CEO. But it's just a naturally occurring phenomenon in business where people just get promoted to a level where they suck at their job, and then they linger there and they never seem to leave.
Repeatable process. Just You can keep
busy work.
I got nothing else to add to that.
Busy work's going to stick around. We're all going to be saddled with like stuff that isn't all that important. And John, we talked about this before the show. You had some like AI. Is that going to make more or less busy work?
It's going to make more busy work. Yeah, because the incompetent manager is going to put somebody on a mindless task to go down a rabbit hole because they are incapable of managing or delegating and have no future vision. That person's going to then do that work and then find out that it was useless. And
they'll have even less respect for people's time because they think it's faster for them to do tasks. They'll just give them more crap.
Well, that's it. That's it. Well, just have ChatGPT do it. I don't understand why it's taking you so long. And then it just turns into shit work.
Mm-hmm.
Performance
good
metrics.
A lot of the stuff will be wrong, by the way. I should add that,
because of the model collapse.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Performance metrics will continue to be gamified. People will, whatever metrics you put on them, they'll find the easiest way to get around it. People will be slow to kind of change those metrics. It'll be the same, especially in sales, same nonsense over and over again, never be fixed.
Yeah, it's human nature, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a game, you learn how to win the game with the least amount of input or effort and to win. So yeah, you gotta keep changing them. So that's a hard thing about just employee work life.
Drop some cynicism, guys. 25, meet the new year, same as the old year. Nothing's gonna happen.
Realistically, nothing's gonna happen.
I think it's gonna be a better year. I mean, granted, I think that's just my delusional optimism, but that I need. But I think 2025 is actually we're gonna see some really good things happen.
Everything,
like AI is going to do everything for us.
I'm with you, John. I'm an optimist at heart. Life will get better.
James, what do you have any predictions on the hiring space?
Yeah. I mean,
are you allowed to say it here, or are you saving that for your other podcast?
Yeah. I was going to plug your other podcast, dude.
I was going to say that from other podcast. I mean, it's okay. So I'll try to summarize it. Continuations of current trends. Like we're just seeing so much more hiring things happening in like real goods manufacturing spaces. So like we've seen way more hiring for salespeople in non-tech than we have tech. I think
that's good.
Yeah. It's our biggest client this year is a company that does like custom kitchen cabinets and countertops. Like they've been hiring like mad, people doing renovations and stuff like that, more so than SaaS. I think that will continue. I think that we're going to see, and not to get into a political thing, but there's obviously a push to get more like US based manufacturing. So I don't see why that would change. I think that marketing will continue, internal hiring for marketing will continue to be second seated compared to sales. I think tech hiring will pick up, but it will not be the same level it was last time there was a big boom, like in 2021, because no one needs as many software developers as they used to because of AI, which was apparent as soon as the first ChatGPT came out. You were talking about was someone talking about offshoring earlier, or was that another conversation? I can't remember.
No, I was.
Yeah, it's a real thing, man.
That's the thing.
It's a real thing. AI and offshoring is a real thing people are going to have to contend with because there are 15 years ago, it was if you offshored, you got tech people out of India, and there were language difference, like language barrier was bigger, the cultural difference was bigger. People were learning how to work with each other. Things weren't as smooth. A lot of times passed. The more people who had good like that, a lot of that's been iron, but there's also more parts of the world with high skill talent. A lot of good. Africa. Eastern Europe has a lot of great developers. Our friend Valerie has an agency out of Africa that's crushing it. I've talked to a bunch of people who have great recruiters and other tech people and different skill sets in Central America. There's less. Everyone's getting more and more on the same page in terms of how to talk to each other. And then when you add in AI, which I think is really the missing piece for how to manage people remotely, understanding who's doing what better. I just think it's moving more and more towards a global workforce.
Yeah, which is awful for American jobs, man. Like more people are just going to be in worse situations, to the point where I met a guy the other night. We were talking about agencies. He's like, "You use American labor?" Ugh.
Yeah,
I mean that's what it is. So that's just a really sad thing, because ultimately you have all these people, whatever economy or business it's in, that they're going to do the thing that is going to make the most money, but ultimately in the long term, it's what hurts the most people. And that's an unfortunate thing about business.
You think back to like when kids go to college, like how much is that going to change what kids are going to college for? Right.
Yeah.
Oh, well, dude, I mean, we were talking about regulatory capture on one of the other episodes, and colleges is the work as an example of that.
I'll drop you off on this point, Jared, because you love the what was the talking point we just said, model collapse. Google elite overproduction. It's a fascinating follow up to that. The fact that this big push.
I'm already an expert. I'm already an expert.
Yeah, we don't. we keep wanting to send more and more people to college, but there literally is no demand to have more people with college degrees. And this is a naturally occurring cycle that's hit every civilization and eventually collapses every economy, because you have too many people who are like want the smart elite job that pays a lot of money. No one wants to do the grunt work job that's actually needed. That's why we have out of work people with college degrees right now, but we have not enough contractors or home builders and stuff like that, because those jobs are looked down upon. We have a complete disparity in terms of what jobs are needed and what jobs people are willing to do, because there's been this push to everyone wants to be elite. So we overproduce quote unquote elite people. Trades.
But the irony of it is the people that didn't go to college and they're going into those trades are making more than the average person that got that 4-year degree in college.
Yeah.
It's just because
how much money, I wonder how much money is being spent in the private equity space on those types of blue collar.
Tons. They're literally buying up.
Yeah, that's where the money is, because that's always going to be needed.
We've been working with a lot of private equity firms this year, and the ones that are doing the most, they're always in more traditional blue collar manufacturing type spaces. Yeah. That's where the growth is. Anyway, John, did you have something you want to finish off?
Mentions?
Yeah, some mentions, John.
All right. So these are our first official sponsors, not the fake ones we've promoted in our last episodes, and we appreciate the cease and desist. We won't mention your names again. First off is Tracy Samantha Schmidt with the PR Accelerator. So if you need anything related in the PR capacity, go ahead and give Tracy Samantha Schmidt a call. She's an awesome lady. You can find her on LinkedIn or go to the PR Accelerator. And then there's the Gare Bear.
What feedback did Tracy give?
She said my nose wasn't as big as others had claimed, and that's good. I didn't need to adjust the zoom on the camera. So thank you, Tracy.
Good. Yeah.
Gare Bear, Gary Barker, incredible salesman. So there's the Barker Leadership Institute. He offers coaching, mentorship, anything in the sales capacity. He's also a fantastic speaker, and I've seen his salesmanship at one of our clients, DTG Web, where he's worked for a number of years. Then you got William Bill Shipley, who's a key account manager at Constant Contact and the CEO at Mountain View Creations and business consultant and author. And he actually is an author. I bought his book. He writes about sci-fi. So James, it's something that you should check out.
Nice.
So huge thanks to those people that give the feedback mentions. And if anybody in the future gives us some genuine feedback, we are happy to mention you on the show. So thank you all.
Awesome. Love it. Give it back to the community. We appreciate that. That is a wrap for episode 6 of the Business is Bullshit podcast. We're getting there, you guys. Catch us on iTunes, Spotify, wherever John decides to put it up. That's his role, is putting up online. Signing off for me, James Hornick, Jared Gibson, John Sarakis, reminding you that business is bullshit.
John, I thought you were no noises today. I'm kind of disappointed. It was like
he did a voice at some point. There was that, at least. It wasn't.
I didn't do the bass story. I thought about it. Yeah.
You can still tell it right now. If you want to, we're still recording.
All right, well, I can tell this quick story. Maybe we can make a short of it or whatever. All right, so James, you're familiar with Bass Pro Shops, right?
No, yeah, yes. James got to go back to the old angle. Hold on.
I can't stand this stupid door right behind where I sit. It just bothers me. But there's no other way of setting this room up. So I always kind of tilt it, give yourself some perspective behind, So anyways.
Yeah, it's a great door. Well. It's a great door there, there.
All right, so you're familiar with Bass Pro Shops, right?
Yes.
You've heard of it? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So a buddy of mine goes fishing with this guy named Roland Martin, professional fisherman. So if you know the whole bass world, he's a huge deal, right? The guy's in his 80s. And he was very close friends and on the fishing tour with the guy that started Bass Pro Shops, right? The guy's name was Johnny Morris. So Johnny goes to Roland and says, hey, he's like, my dad owns, a liquor store. Owns a couple of them, and I've been thinking about putting some a bait shop in the back where we could sell tackle and everything. And Roland replies, he's like, God damn, that has to be the worst fucking idea I've ever heard. He's like, who is going to want to buy liquor and fishing equipment in the same place? So in any event, Johnny doesn't listen to him and then sets the store up, and it turns out to be, mildly successful. Well, Roland's working for a fish finding company, and he invites him. He says, hey, you should do a demo with your fish finder over at my new bait store. So Roland goes to his boss and says, hey, I want to go do the fish finder demo for Johnny at the store. And his boss says, absolutely fucking not. Why would I let you take fish finders to a liquor store? Anyway, he takes them and he sells all of them. They're complete stock, right? So the store is doing okay. So a few years later, Johnny goes to him and says, "Hey," he's like, "I'm thinking about doing this catalog where I would send like bait and tackle, in a magazine through the mail." And of course, Roland's like, "That has got to be the worst goddamn idea I've ever fucking heard." He's like, "Who wants your fucking junk mail?" So guy's like, whatever. Doesn't listen to him, sends it over. Few years later, we're now in like the 80s and 90s, and the store has got some real traction. He gets approached by private equity, and they said, "Hey, we want to buy your stores for $50 million." He just had a few stores at the time, and the guy, of course, goes back to Roland, asks him for advice, and he's like, "Take the money." He's like, "You're lucky you even made it this far, you dumb lucky son of a bitch." Guy does not take the money, and the moral of the story is this prediction was completely false because today, that same guy, Johnny Morris, is worth $10 billion.
Love it.
I don't think we can do a short out of that, but it was good. That's crazy.
It's a true story, too. Literally going, and I was like, wait a second, I wanted to verify this. I went on Wikipedia. Yeah, like that is the story. It's just like, holy shit, man.
It's your redneck voice really made the story, though. Like Wikipedia wouldn't be able to capture that. Like without that, it was just okay story, but with the voice,
you
chef's
dumb
kiss.
son of a bitch.
That's how the guy talks, man. It's great. All right. That's all I got.